So what I wanted to do at this point is welcome up here to the podium Mr. Corey Saylor. He's the National Director, Legislative Director for CAIR. Those of you, I'm sure you all know who CAIR is. And we'll be keeping the same type of clock. So 5, 3, 1. I'll let you guys know. Please give him a warm thank you. Come on up.
Assalamu alaikum. Just see if I can. I'm going to ask a quick question of our cameraman. Are you okay if I move down onto the floor and speak from there? Thank you. I'm a community organizer by nature, and I always feel like a podium is kind of between me and the audience, so I'd rather come down here and stand and talk with you. Tell you something you don't know. That's really easy. On August 10th, I'm going to turn 40 years old, and I am just thrilled to be invited to a youth conference, let me tell you. Because as people are teasing me about how old I am, I can say, hey, but the youth still want to talk to me. Thank you. We're here to talk a little bit about congressional engagement today, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 3 simple principles that we've learned that you can truly apply anywhere in your life, whether you be at school, talking to your parents, and your parents probably won't like that I'm going to teach you these things, but that's okay. Wherever you happen to be. But let's just give a quick idea of where we as a community stand on the congressional legislative campaign front. And I think this is something you already know, but it can be summed up pretty easily. During the last campaign, everybody was really happy to have us there with them, as long as we kind of stood a little further to the side. They wanted our votes. They wanted our community. They didn't necessarily want us in the picture, though. And that's where we stand right now. We're beginning to get a place at the table, but what we as a community, whether we be Somali, whether we be Muslim, whether we just be Americans with a particular interest, have to do is show them that our issues, having us at the table, is worth something to them. So what we have to do is prove, particularly to people who are elected officials, that we can deliver the things that they need if they deliver to us the things that we want. And in the case of elected officials, those things are very simple. I'll mention it once, and then we're going to go to the 3 things that are applicable to anything. But with elected officials, we all know it. It's votes, it's money, volunteers, which is particularly important in this room. They need people working on their campaigns. They need people working in their offices. And it's a great opportunity for you to learn how the system works from the inside. Learn the real skills. So they're looking for votes, volunteers, money, and connections. They want access to constituents. So if you're somebody who runs a youth group, if you're associated with a mosque, and you can connect them to voters, they'll really appreciate that. That is what they are looking for. So when we're talking to people and trying to convince them that our issues are important, there's 3 things we always want to keep in mind and try to achieve. One is fairly simple. You really care about your issue. It means a lot to you. You're very passionate about it. To them, it's another issue. To them, you are one group among 50 today they're going to meet with who are going to bombard them with different things. Why do they care more about your issue than anything else? So what you want to do is research this person and figure out how you can present your case in such a way that appeals to their interest. How is picking up your issue going to make them look good? Sometimes that can be very, very difficult to do, but it's worth taking the time and doing the research to achieve. One of the great cases there is, does anybody in this room know who Charlie Wilson is? Anybody read his book? A couple of hands, but you guys don't count because you're not among the youth, right? Charlie Wilson is the man who basically got American funding for the war in Afghanistan back in the 80s. He made a whole career out of becoming the guy who was known for helping the Afghans. It became the people who were trying to help the Afghans, eventually were able to make him see that it was in his personal self-interest to help out the Afghans. He took up the issue, and all of the support and aid that went from the United States to Afghanistan in the late 70s, 80s, is pretty much because of this gentleman. So it's worth taking the time and doing that. This community can eventually find someone who can be a leader like that for them, who can help them. The second most important point is the way we phrase things, the way we speak to people. We have to say things to people in such a way that it's easy for them to understand and embrace. You hear this a lot in congressional or in discussions around the table. It's not supposed to be that way. Well, it is that way. We have to make people understand our issues from a frame that works for them. Let me give you a very, very simple example. I work at the Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR. We're a civil rights, civil liberties organization. It is our job to make sure that the Constitution is upheld, particularly in a lot of cases that nobody wants to even look at. So in North Carolina right now, everybody knows there are a bunch of arrests down there. I don't know if these people are guilty or not. I do know that they have the right to a fair trial, and whatever the jury decides is whatever the jury decides, right? But nobody wants to hear that fair trial part. Everybody wants to hear these guys are out to get us. So what do we say to them? Somebody comes to me and they say, Corey, I don't see how you can defend these guys. My answer? Well, actually what I'm doing is I'm defending the Constitution. And if you think about it, John Adams, who was the second president of our country, he defended men who were accused in the Boston Massacre. So if John Adams is going to defend British soldiers accused of killing American citizens because he cares about the law, I'm going to follow his example. I've just named two things there that people in the United States generally won't argue with: the Constitution and the Founding Fathers, right? And that's where, particularly those people in this room that are still in school, listen in your civics lessons, and you'll pick up on these things. The Founding Fathers were some amazing people, and American history has some amazing examples of people putting their feet down and standing up for civil rights, civil liberties. Listen for that kind of thing. Here's another example. I was once asked on a news program, well, I'll tell the whole story. I'm being interviewed about jihad, right? And I know this interviewer is setting me up. He wants to make me look bad. It's a taped interview, though. So that doesn't mean I'm on Fox News with people screaming at me. We have a little bit of time to talk. So he gets ready. I see the question coming. He leans forward. Tell me about jihad. I said, no problem. It's my right to defend my life, liberty, and the way I choose to be happy. And I swear to you, the guy's mouth dropped open. And after a few seconds, the producer said, cut, let's retape that. What I did is I quoted back to him the Declaration of Independence. I made it something he could understand, right? Why did the Founding Fathers and the American revolutionaries and the colonials stand up? They wanted the right to defend their life, liberty, and the way to pursue happiness the way they chose, right? In many cases, when Muslims are defending themselves, that's exactly what we're doing. But we just have to remind other people that that's what we're doing, right? So this is what I'm talking about. When you're getting ready to go and talk to somebody about an issue you care about, think about ways you can say it that just make a lot of sense. Trust me, it goes on all the time, right? Listen to talking points coming out of congressional people. Do we drill for oil in Alaska? No. We're exploring for energy. You can't be against exploring for energy. Come on, guys. Right? This is very, very common tactic and one that we can also take advantage of. The key there, though, never, ever, ever lie or attempt to deceive. Okay? First of all, we're Muslims and we don't do that. Second of all, if you get caught doing it, you're discredited forever. So that's not what you're looking to do. You're looking to find ways of making your points that are more acceptable to your audience. The last key point that I'll make, and then I'll stop talking, because it is kind of like Fox News today where we have a very short amount of time to get a lot out, and I'll start taking questions. The third key point, you want to communicate with elected officials and other people like that. When you write to them, think Twitter. I get emails from people all the time, and I know this is true in congressional offices. They will send me their 500-page, your first question. Okay, 5 minutes? Wow. They'll send me a 500-page essay, call me the next day and ask me if I've read it. And my honest answer, I haven't had time. I'd love to read it. Maybe you've solved the world's problems out to 3 decimal places. I don't know. I don't have time to read it, though. When you're writing an email to people who are elected or people that you're trying to influence their opinion, in 150 words, because research says most people will read that, try to sum up, this is what I want, this is my concern, this is what I want you to do about it. If you need to add more, try to do it in bullet points. All right? That's the instant points for the morning. And at that point in time, I'd like to take questions. You were going to be my first question, but since you're cutting me off, I'm going to cut you off. So who would like to be the first question? Sir.
What do you find as the most challenging thing as you're walking down the hall of Congress?
I'm okay as long as I'm walking down the hall of Congress because I'm a white guy. As soon as I walk in the office and say I'm Muslim, it's all over. And that is truly the most challenging thing. As I said, our community has been stigmatized. I know it's not supposed to be that way. We all know we're good people, but guess what? That's the way it is. So the onus is not on other people to understand us. The onus is on us to show them who we actually are, to overcome the stereotypes that have been applied to us. And we do that in many different ways. One key way that you can do that is just simply by being who you are and being passionate about what you're interested in. If you're interested in, let's say, healthcare, since it's the thing in the news today, if you go out and you work on that issue, people will get to know you as somebody who cares about the same things they do. Then later on, when they find out you're Somali or Muslim or something like that, they're like, oh, they can't be bad because I've been working with them for the last 6 months and they're a great person, right? Number one way to overcome that big problem is just simply to be present and show them who we know we are. Next question, please.
Yes, sir. Where? Oh, close to you. You first and then...
He's in charge.
Here. No, he'll go first.
Since Obama came to power,
Let me go
have you
first.
seen any change about the war on terror?
His question, for anybody who couldn't hear it, since Obama came to power, have we seen any change in the war on terror? We have seen a change in tone, primarily. And I think that gives us an opportunity. Many of the policies remain the same. And they're even talking about, last week, Napolitano made a speech, she's the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, in which she invited all Americans to sort of be watching out for problems. I don't think anybody has any problems with, if you see something, say something. But it's the exact same idea that was offered under the Bush administration. Everybody freaked out under the Bush administration. Now it's kind of quiet at this point. So we're seeing many of the same things. But the opening is a change in tone. I got you. The opening is a change in tone. And what that means is that under the Bush administration, let's face it, we were banging our heads against concrete blocks. Under the Obama administration, there is an opportunity. But what that means is it's not time to slow down. It means it's time to work harder because we can actually achieve something. Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Abdul. I'm from Arizona, and I would like to ask you...
Thank you for making the flight out.
Yeah. Well, I'm here now. I wanted to ask you a question that reminds us of Barry Goldwater. The extremism in defense of liberty is no vice. If there are bad people, why don't the government go and get them?
You're right. Extremism is bad, whatever form it takes. The way the real world works, though, is perception changes the way people look at that extremism. So when the Department of Homeland Security sends out a report that says that racially motivated groups in the United States are interested in recruiting returning veterans, that's something that people in the field have known forever. But that causes a huge problem. How dare you talk about our veterans that way? They didn't say anything negative about the veterans. Muslims, on the other hand, let's face it, we have a stereotype that we have to deal with. So yes, you're right. Extremism, no matter what its form, is wrong. But the way the public reacts to it is all based upon the public's perception. And that's why I was talking earlier about this is the way we present our arguments. Use these things like the Founding Fathers, the Constitution, things that we as Americans are taught from birth to show respect to because it helps people to understand our arguments and our perception.
Okay, last question.
Well, I'm known to be loquacious. I talk a lot, so bear with me.
And man, you dress well, too.
Thank you. Well, according to your advice, you say politicians, they care about three things. They care about the vote, money. I'll talk
Volunteers
about the volunteer
and
later on.
connections.
If you look at Muslims in America, Muslims have been in America for such a long period of time. Somalis, we might be a new immigrant, but Muslims have been here for centuries now, even back to slavery time. Also, if you look at the income bracket, Muslims are on the top in terms of education and income-wise. And also, you said in your speech, politicians, they don't want to be associated with anything that has to do with Muslim. They just want us to be on the other side of the table, not necessarily around the table. So my question to you is, if we have the income and the education as a Muslim, and we have the vote, almost 6 million people are in America. That might be off, I might be off track, but the last estimate that I saw was 6 million. My question to you is, why is it that they are ignoring us, the politicians?
Unfortunately, this is kind of high-level answer, but the American Muslim community our first public affairs organization was founded around 1990. So if you think about it in terms of organizing politically, we're teenagers. And parents in the room, you can say what you want to about teenagers, right? They're still new at things, right? I will say to you, though, that the achievements of our community have been pretty amazing. In that short span of time that we've been organizing, 2 members of Congress that are Muslim now. And both of them elected post 9/11. That blows my mind. So it's coming, and I would love to come back and talk to you about organizing on the ground, but that's a longer conversation. So for the moment, just keep in mind we're new at this, but the achievements of the community have been amazing. Let me wrap up by just saying this. We at CAIR believe you in the Somali community have an enormous right to be proud of your heritage. Because many times the reports that we get at CAIR come from the Somali community because Somalis want to go to work and do their jobs, and they want to be able to practice their faith at the same time. And when somebody at work says you can't practice your faith, the Somali community has the reputation within CAIR for being the ones who say, nope, not going to accept that, right? We see it again and again and again. So there is a will in this community that I personally find deeply impressive. So I believe strongly that if you choose to continue organizing conferences like this, you as the young people choose to get up and come to these conferences rather than hanging out on, what is it, Webkins. I'm sure you guys are too old for Webkins, but that's where my daughters are. If you choose to continue to do that, then I want to point out 2 other communities to you. Cuban Americans, small in numbers. Our entire foreign policy toward Cuba is basically controlled by Cuban Americans because they care about their particular issue and they work hard on it and organize, right? And then also, in answer to the gentleman's question, when are we going to see changes? Japanese Americans. They are the only community like Muslim Americans who have been blamed for an attack on this country. And frankly, they were put in internment camps, so we are ahead of the curve. Took them 40 years to get the government to acknowledge it had done the wrong thing and to give them reparations. Now, this is real life. It's not TV. We don't always see that. We want to, but we don't always see that. But they applied themselves. They didn't give up. 40 years later, they got what they wanted. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.